We continue with Parshat Tetzaveh, story of the Kohanim, the descendants of Aaron, who will be the Kohanim afterwards and after him. What I want to look at is a few different ideas in the in Parak Chaf Het, in the 29th chapter of the book. And one of the things that we talked a little bit about is it's right that last week's Parsha Truma, is about the Kalim, about the Aron, the menorah, the Shulchan, the Mizbeach, the Ark, the altar, the table, the lamppost. Here we really talk about the Kohanim himself. And one big aspect of course, is the clothing that is worn by, by Aaron and his descendants. Before any sacrifice happens, Aaron is dressed. Vilbashta et Aharon. You need to put clothing upon Aaron. And clothing is very important in the Torah. Clothing is not just decoration to make you look nice and fancy. Is that Met Gala around now? I saw some article on CNN or wherever it was, talking about the Met Gala and the clothing that they all wear. This is not decorative clothing. This is not show-off clothing. It's supposed to be, clothing is supposed to represent a transformation. We talked about it back in the book of Bereshit, especially with Yosef, where clothing represents his changes, his identity, his the removal of his clothing, etc., etc. The big day kahuna changes Aaron's role. It doesn't symbolize holiness. It creates sort of this institutional identity. It's demonstrating that Aaron is now the Kohen Gadol, right? And there's a whole ceremony about it. You have to take the clothing, you have to place them onto Aaron. We have a similar thing in a very moving moment towards the end of Aaron's life, where Aaron takes off his big day kahuna and Moshe puts them, and they're placed and they're given to his son, who puts them on. There is this idea here of creating an institution, creating an idea of what it means to be a Kohen. And so garments are very important in the Torah, in the Tanakh, in terms of transition and status. Think we're about to get to Purim. Think of Megillat Esther, and right, Mordechai putting on the clothing and coming out, and etc. Esther, when she wears Malchut, when she goes to see the king, and we see that here as well. Right, unlike, let's say, Moshe's clothing is not important. Moshe is this charismatic leader, and Moshe is not an institutional leader. And what I mean by that, it's not a dynasty. Nobody comes and pours oil on his head, and nobody consecrates him. Aaron is consecrated. David is consecrated after them, their families, because it's the creation of an institution, and that's what the clothing is representing here, as opposed to the others where that is not done. So here we see something different, Aaron versus Moshe, you could say, as well as the idea of the of how it's being done to the Kohanim. Okay, let's go a little bit further into the same aliyah. We have an idea further of what is this process is going to be a 7-day process. This is what's going to happen. For 7 days, you have to fill their hands. Okay, now this term miluim is a day, malay, to fill, is an idea of the inauguration, the consecration. But what is striking here, or what is, obvious here, is the 7 days. We talked about this last week. We talked about this in the past. When we talk about the Mishkan, the comparison very much is back to Gan Eden, back to the Garden of Eden. We have a lot of 7 cycles of 7s in the Torah, of course. Like 7 days of Bereshit, 7-day purification process. Later on, we'll have the Shemitah cycle, echoing the weekly Shabbat cycle, echoing the 7 days of Bereshit. And we'll have more ideas of this, as we've spoken about how the Mishkan parallels the opening chapter of Bereshit, God creating a house for man, man creating a house for God, and therefore they're parallel images. And so the Kohanim are created over 7 days. They are becoming, I don't know how to say, it's like a new species, but a new role that humans have, which can then allow at the end of the chapter, V'shachanti b'toch b'nei Yisrael, what we started with at the beginning, back a couple of chapters back at the beginning of Parshat Truma, where God says, take gather all the stuff for me, V'shachanti b'tocham, and I will become your shachen, I will become your neighbor. So here we have that the Mishkan is like a microcosm of the Garden of Eden. It's a sacred space. And here God is right. That's what the Garden of Eden was, Adam and Eve. But what we talked about, some of the differences there, God ran around. There was no limitations. And so, things were dynamic and things were scary, and Adam and Eve hide from God. That's not the way. Here we have a very structured idea of what it means for God to be, how we interact with God, how we get to God. And so, but we have, again, these sevens, similar to many other things, we have Vayichulu, and we're going to have Vayichal, right? The first word in Kiddush, Vayichulu Hashemayim v'Chol Tzvaam, and we're going to have later on Vayichal, when Moshe concludes the Mishkan, a lot of the pictures, the sort of the four, right, the boundaries and borders, like the four rivers, et cetera, et cetera. There are many others which we referred to in the past of these parallels between creation and the Mishkan. So it's no surprise here that it is a 7-day process, linking it with the 7 days of creation. Third thing that happens, we're talking about the Mishkan, and there are going to be lots of sacrifices that are brought here by the Kohanim as part of their consecration and their inauguration. But something else we talk here, because it has to be brought every day, is the daily sacrifice, the Karban Tamid. It's not the only place in the Torah where we have the command of bringing the sacrifice every single day. We'll have it later on, I believe, in Parshat Pinchas, in the book of Bamidbar, and we're told that this is something that happens every single day. Olat Tamid. It's right, and what happens is we're told afterwards it's going to be brought at the Ohel Moed, at the tent of the meeting, the place where God meets you. And this is a very important idea, and it's an idea that's summarized and said many, many times, right? This is the Karban Tamid. This is the daily sacrifice. This is the sacrifice that the Jews bring every morning, every afternoon. We don't have them today, so instead we have the tefillot of Shachrit and Mincha. And the Karban Tamid is not about thanking God for something wonderful. It's not about asking God for forgiveness. It's not a request, even though much of the Amidah, the majority of the Amidah, are requests to God. It's an encounter, right? It's the place where we go, Petach Ol Moed, the entrance to the tent, right? You're going to somebody's door, you're knocking on their door, you're going to the entrance of the door to see them. Whatever, you might have a good reason, you might be serving them with a lawsuit, I don't know, but you're going up to their door to greet them. The Tamid is the idea of encountering God, right? A Karban, Korev, means from the language to be close. God is your neighbor. You can go and knock on your neighbor's door. It's a little easier to see your neighbor than it is somebody who's 6,000 miles away. Every morning, every evening, there's a rhythm, there's a constancy. God is the neighbor. God's presence is linked to discipline, to daily, to what we do. Holiness, according to the Torah, is not going to be achieved through one-time amazing thing. Right? If you want to be right, practice, Carnegie Hall, etc., etc. Just had the Olympics. You want to be the best speed skater in the world. None of us here might be it. Nothing personal to the rest of you. I only talk for myself. But even the people who are the best, how are they going to become even the best of the best? Is through regular practice, not an occasional high, a steady rhythm. The kahuna's role is not this one-time thing. It's the daily reliability of the Kohanim in doing what they are doing here. And so that's the idea that we have here. So it writes these 7 days, but including these 7 days, even though this is a big moment, this is the moment of the consecration. Nevertheless, within the consecration, what we have, which is very important, is the Karban Tamid, the daily sacrifice, telling you each and every day, this is what's going to be done, and this is the way to encounter God. You're going to encounter God. You're going to hear more behaviorally if you are there every day. One last idea. Let's go a little bit back into the same section. This is from Chaf Tet Chaf, and a very interesting part of the consecration, the inauguration of the Kohanim. It talks about taking blood and placing them onto different parts of the Kohanim's body. There's a reason I'm touching my ear, not because I have a scratch, an itch on my ear. V'natata al tnuch ozen Aaron hayimanit, v'al bohen yado hayimanit, v'al bohen raglo hayimanit. You have to place them. You have to place some blood as part of the ceremony on the Kohen's ear, on the Kohen's hand, and on the Kohanim on their and on the foot. And the three ideas interesting to think about, right? The ear is how we take things in. Now you take things in also with your eyes. I know you see things, but I guess the ear is internal. That's one method of sensory intake. Then, right, the hand is how we act, action. And the foot is the movement of that action, right? Our feet define if we're going to go east or west or north or south or right or left. It's our foot that actually does that. We can stick out our hands as far as it goes, but the hand is, at a certain point, unless you know how to walk on your hands very well for a very long time, you need your feet to give you the direction. A few things are interesting about this. And that's one thing that's to me intriguing about it. One thing that's let's go. A few different things about it. One, right? It's we start here with the ear. The Kohen first has to hear it, then he has to act. Right? We just sorry. Step back. I repeated what I said. My apologies. So, right, this in a sense is similar to the way in which we generally act, right? First we hear, then we act, then the foot is directional. And so it's generally sort of the way that we act as humans. First we perceive, then we act, and then we move in that direction. It's that's one thing that's an aspect about it that's interesting. Second thing about it is these are sort of all sort of externalities, right? The ear sticks out of the face. You could say the nose. Okay, why not the nose? I don't know. The hands, right? The stick out from the body, from your arms. The feet stick out from your legs. They're all liminal points. They're all the edges. They're all sort of this in between space. The ear which hears the sounds, the hand which touches and can alter the world, the foot which cross boundaries. And this is an aspect of the Kohen. As we said yesterday, the Kohen is sort of an in-between as his role. Is he a messenger of God? Is he a messenger of the people? I like to think the Gemara says more he's a messenger of God. I like to think of him more as a messenger of the people, bringing the sacrifices to the people. But the Kohen is marked at the boundary. He's in between God and the people. He is sort of that conduit. Think of Birkat Kohanim and how the bracha from God is supposed to go through the Kohanim. The Kohanim are not the ones who are blessing you. They're the ones who are moving their hands around and saying the words, but it's the blessing supposed to come through them from God. His body is sort of the boundary. And think about the blood, and go back all the way to, let's say, Yetziat Mitzrayim, where we put blood on the doorpost. The Kohen becomes kind of like a living kli, a living agent, and the thing that's living at the doorpost to allow God to come into the people and the people to come towards God. So it's interesting, sort of the extremities that are used here in the service and in doing this to the Kohen. Similar way, again, just talking about the same aspect here. We talked about it being the outer edges of the body. To think about how we interact with the world. Right? Jews, we are still here today. Why? Because we always refuse to, well, we shouldn't say always, but unfortunately many of us has, to assimilate into general society. We're not going to be Romans because we're in the Roman Empire. We're not going to be Greeks because we're in the great Greek Empire. We're going to be ourselves. We're going to be who we believe we should be. And right, it's part of that question here, looking at the Kohanim as a model as to how do we live sort of at that boundary, and how do we live where we're sort of inside our own homes, inside our mikdash, inside our shtetls, our ghettos, our communities, whatever word you want to use, but at the same time also reaching out to the outside world, going back and being there in front of everybody. So a few different ideas here together, right? First, the obedience, the ear. It's the places that are sort of extended out of the body. It's the idea of us being sort of on the boundary. We have to be inside our community, but we also have to have effects and ideas that go beyond our community. Hearing first and acting second, directional. And through this whole process, what seems to happen is the Kohanim themselves become, in a sense, kalim. They become vessels. The same way that we had a ceremony making the ark, the Arona vessel, making the menorah a vessel and sanctified it. Here, blood is used, not just oil, to bind and to say that these people are now similar ways vessels to God within the temple. And so for 7 days, Aaron and his sons will do this. And at the end of those 7 days, they will become vessels to God and representatives of the people to God and of God back to Bnei Yisrael.